Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today I'm going to talk about what are we responding to? I remembered recently that years and years ago, a very close friend said to me that her son, who I think was 12 at the time, was having a problem because he wanted to go to a dance or a party or something. There was going to be dancing, and he wanted to be able to dance with girls. And it seemed to him that all the girls knew how to dance, and some of the boys did, but he didn't. And he was, very much on the back foot with this, and very sort of uncomfortable about it. So she knew that I loved dance, and I think at the time I might have already started learning how to teach dance, or at least facilitate, hold space for conscious dance. And she asked me to do a little session with him. So he and I went into one of the bedrooms and sat down, and I asked him, he shared a little bit with me. And I said, well, something to understand that will probably help you is that when music is playing, you don't have to respond to a particular piece of music a particular way. Each piece of music consists of many parts. There's the rhythm, there's the vocals, there's a melody, which might be dancing around the rhythm. There's the bass beat to that. And sometimes there are other elements as well, like bits of percussion coming in as anchor points or as points of extra life and stimulus in the piece. And I said, when you're moving on the dance floor, you can actually be in tune with whichever one of those you like. And it doesn't matter. Now, if the person you're dancing with is in tune with one of the other parts, so let's say the girl is dancing to the vocals. So her body is following the lead of the vocals. Let's say instead the boy decides to follow the bass beat. So his movement will be very different from hers, but they're both moving with the music. And if it's a beautiful piece of music, then what they're both doing will actually work. It'll be complementary. So it doesn't have to be the same. That he's still responding to the stimulus of the music. He's still tuning in to the overall gestalt and the overall multi-layered beauty of the music. But he's not trying to copy exactly what she's doing. And he's not trying to copy what everyone else in the room is doing. And he said, well, how do you know which one of those to respond to? And I said, well, let your body decide. Let your body decide which of those it wants to follow. And also let your body decide if it's going to start to shift to one of the other layers of the music. Or sometimes your body will, over time, sometimes your body will start to create its own counterpoint movement, which isn't specifically following any one of those layers, but is following the music overall. Now that's when we become much more expressive on the dance floor, when that starts to happen. So, and eventually I said, you may reach the point where you're dancing to the music of your own soul. And I said, well, I'm not going to expect you to do that at the age of 12, as you're learning to just basically hold your own on the dance floor. And I gave him a few steps that were useful to kind of get a kind of a holding pattern, a bit like doggy paddling in the water. If you haven't really learned to swim, you can sort of doggy paddle, you can kind of keep your balance. So I gave him a few things that he could start from. And off he went. Had a great time. It really worked. And now he can dance really well because he got that base level in, that base foundation, where he wasn't trying to impress anybody or get anyone's approval. He's following the part of the music that his body responded to. Now, we can do the exact same thing in any situation. So if somebody asks you a question, and this came up recently, I was talking to somebody and they were saying that they really don't like it if someone asks them a question and they don't have a really clear, clever answer for the question. And they get uncomfortable immediately. They think they can't give value in their response. And I said to them the same thing as I said to this boy. I said to them, you don't have to respond only to the content of the question. You can respond to one of the many other layers of what's going on in the question. So, for example, if someone says to you, let's say you're a young person and someone says to you, so what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with your life? Older people have this infuriating habit of asking questions like that, which frankly, very, very rarely produce a good result, because what are you going to do with your life? I mean, how long have you got for me to talk about all my thoughts and feelings about that? Very few people have got a crystal clear idea like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a yoga teacher. I want to be a politician. I want to be, whatever. And those answers actually are usually not terribly interesting. They don't reveal very much about the person. But what you can do, instead of, oh my God, I got to come up with a clever answer to that, is you can actually respond to something else that's happening in the question. For example, that person may be genuinely wanting to learn more about you. That person may be bored out of their skull at the social event that you're at, or the networking event that you're at, and they're just trying to make small talk to survive. Or that person may be a very generous-hearted, sweet person who likes to connect with people and be friendly and warm and help people feel welcome. Now, you're going to be picking up on those energetically within yourself. You can respond to any of those. So if someone says to you, what do you want to do with your life? And you're 21 years old and you don't know yet, you can respond in multiple different ways, not just the way of, oh, I want to be this or that, and this is my path to it. Instead, you can respond by saying, it's really nice of you to ask. I've been reflecting on that, actually. And, at the moment, I really enjoy this, that, and the other. And I'm reading this amazing book. Really? What's that about? Well, it's about this, and this is why I find it fascinating. And you're in a conversation. You're out of the predictable tennis match, boring, not very interesting, not very revealing, content-led conversation. And the same applies in all kinds of situations. We can respond to whichever layer of what's happening in our area, in our situation, in our experience. We can respond to whichever aspect of it we wish to. So we hear something on the news. We can respond to the content of that. We can respond to the energy of it. We can respond to the emotion of it. We can respond to the underlying cultural currents that we're picking up through it. We can respond to something specific someone said. We can respond to how the person or the interviewer or the presenter seems to be manifesting and energetically when they're talking about it. There are many things we can respond to, and there are many aspects of us that are doing the responding. And we can choose which of those we focus on, which of those we actually feed energy into. I had an example, and a lot of my friends had a similar parallel example to this during the time of the COVID regime. There were a lot of people having a lot of conversations about what was going on and what ought to go on and who agreed with what and who disagreed with what and who was angry and who was frightened and who was this and who was that. And I chose to focus on what I call emotional undercurrents and energetic undercurrents. So emotional undercurrents, there was a lot of fear going on in the collective, just generally in the atmosphere. There was also anger going on. And I chose to focus more on that. And there was an energetic layer below that, which was around people feeling blocked energetically. And then later on, people feeling some energetic liberation as people started doing their own research. People started thinking for themselves around the whole thing. People started exploring, what do they actually want to do? What do they feel is right? Could they follow that? How could they focus on that? So there were all sorts of shifts that happened throughout. And I focused on those more intangible aspects and put my attention on those, and I put my energy in those directions. So what that meant was I was consciously choosing to process what was happening within me on those levels, which proved to be very helpful for me in terms of my functioning and my general sense of well-being. But I was also, along with many other people all around the planet, actually helping the collective to process those things collectively. And some people call this group mind, some people call it group consciousness, group energy, whatever you want to call it. But that's where I was putting my energy, and that was work. I found I needed to sleep at least 9, sometimes 9.5 or 10 hours every night during that period, because I was actually processing a lot with my body. But what I wasn't doing was putting lots and lots of energy into arguing about things, investing in opinions about things, and trying to solve things on that level. There were people doing that very effectively, and I'm glad they were doing it. And there were people trying to do that very ineffectively. And obviously there was a cost to them of doing that. So that's an example I think most people can tune into during that period. Where did you focus? Where did you put your energy? What did you find most helpful? And were you connected to the notion that you could choose where you put your attention and you could choose where you put your energy? So if we come back to the present day, if you look at yourself in your day, I mean, even in this very small example of you tuning into this particular episode, you may be just listening to it. You may be watching the video. If you're watching the video, that presupposes you've already chosen to take this in to some extent on the visual level. So for some reason, you wanted to actually take in the visual level. You wanted to actually watch me speaking and perhaps pick up on some of what's being expressed visually through my presence, my expression, how I'm showing up in physical form, in a visual way. Equally, if you're watching the video, you're also listening to my voice. And of course, on audio, you're only hearing the voice. But what are you tuning into? And are you tuning into it consciously, or are you just tuning into it automatically? And are you aware of the fact that you can choose what you're tuning into? Whether it's the energy, whether it's the tone of voice, whether it's how I look, the facial expressions, gestures or movements, whether it's the background that I had behind me. And is it the words you're tuning into? Is it the feeling behind the words? Is it the implications of the words? What are you tuning into? And is that what you want to tune into? And where are you feeding energy into it? And then where is it resonating for you within your body? And where are you putting your attention in your inner landscape? And then after you've listened to something like this or watched something like this, what do you then do? Do you then walk away and just forget all about it and just let it kind of marinate on the subconscious levels? Or do you sometimes go away and reflect on it? Or maybe even write notes? I've had people approach me and say that after each episode, they actually write a couple of pages in their journal where they're talking and sharing about insights they've had and questions that have emerged for them of their own. Nothing to do with me really, but something that's happened following the fact that they tuned into an episode. They've used the episode as a piece of catalytic nourishment for them to help them actually go deeper into their own inner wisdom and bring that out. So these are all different ways that we can choose what we're responding to, just like with the music. We can choose where we are focusing, which layer we're focusing on. We can choose where we're putting our energy. And we can actually choose where we focus within ourselves in terms of what's happening within the physical body, what's happening energetically, emotionally, and psychologically. And we can choose after the experience what we put our attention on, where we focus, where we put our energy, or whether we just let it go. So I wish you a beautiful week. And I always say, I look forward to hearing, I don't always say, I sometimes say, I look forward to hearing how it went. I don't get very many people contacting me to share with me after the episode, and there's no reason that you should at all, but I do love it. I do love it when people contact me and say, "Yeah, after your episode, I went away and reflected on this," which was not what you were talking about, but actually for some reason it came to mind. Or, "I focused on something you did talk about, and this emerged, and I had a conversation with my friend or my partner, and this emerged, and it was very interesting and helpful." Or, "Catherine, that was confusing, and honestly, I don't know why you were talking about it." Anything. I'm always very, very grateful and love it when people reach out in the comments, perhaps, and just say what occurred for you. But in short of that, thank you very much indeed for watching and for listening. And I'm just so delighted that there are such a growing number of people around the planet tuning into the show, because that tells me that there's a growing number of people who are investing in their consciousness, investing in their connection with truth and transcendence, and who are choosing to honor me and honor the show with including this in their particular support system and structure of input. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next time.